The story begins with a young boy named Orun slaying horned rabbits in a dungeon, and the ease with which he slices them makes him realize that his skill with the sword has not dulled despite recent events. Just then, a group of goblins approaches him. He first uses a support magic spell on himself to become stronger and to make his sword sharper, thinking to himself that support magic is typically reserved for strengthening party members, but since he is fighting alone, he has no choice but to apply it to himself. Strengthened, he easily cuts through the goblins, but more keep coming, forcing him to remain alert while also tracking the duration of his magic. He notes that 2.5 minutes have already passed, and the effects of his spell will fade soon. But this is not a concern, because he still has ample mana due to traveling solo. So, without hesitation, he casts the enhancement again and resumes his advance. Keeping precise count of the seconds, Orun repeatedly refreshes the spell just before it expires, all while reflecting that an ordinary adventurer like himself would normally never attempt to be a jack of all trades. He recalls that he was once an enchanter, a role he only took on after being abruptly cast out of his party, and this thought pulls him into a memory from 2 nights earlier. In the flashback, Oliver, the leader of his party, approached him alongside the rest of the group and calmly announced his decision. Orun had assumed it was a tasteless joke, unable to accept that his closest childhood friend could be serious about something like this. Oliver, however, explained that their long history was the very reason he had tolerated Orun's shortcomings for so many years, but his patience had finally run out. Annery and Derek supported Oliver without hesitation, stating bluntly that Orun contributed nothing but delays and weaknesses to the team. The words hit Orun hard as memories surfaced of the day, 8 years earlier, when he and Oliver had formed the party together, building it from nothing and raising it to S rank within only a few years. They had even earned the title of the Heroes Party after becoming the only group to clear the 94th floor of the Great Dungeon of the South. And now, standing there, Orun felt as though he was losing family rather than comrades. Desperate, he begged for another chance and demanded to know what had caused Oliver's sudden change of heart. Oliver explained that during their joint raid weeks earlier, he had seen just how powerful the enchanters of other S-ranked parties truly were, and witnessing that gap made it painfully clear how weak Orun was by comparison, leading the group to decide they no longer wanted him. Orun argued that he was primarily a swordsman, not a dedicated enchanter, and that expecting him to match specialists was unreasonable, especially considering that he had achieved remarkable accomplishments, such as developing his own original magic. Derek dismissed this entirely, claiming Orun had only abandoned the sword because Oliver surpassed him in that role. Orun denied this, insisting he changed roles solely because he possessed the greatest aptitude for it, and reminded them that his custom-made spells were the reason they had survived on the deepest dungeon floors. Oliver, however, showed no interest in hearing any of it, making it clear that the decision had already been made. Oliver revealed that he had already chosen a replacement enchanter and offered a quiet apology for the betrayal, leaving Orun with no room to argue as the decision had already been finalized. With nothing left to say, Orun accepted the outcome and turned away, intending to leave in silence, but Annery stopped him, unable to contain her frustration. She poured out her resentment by calling him a jack of all trades and a clown who foolishly believed he could handle everything on his own, but Orun did not respond, and chose to walk away instead. Back in the present, Orun acknowledges to himself that Annery's insult was not entirely wrong, since he is currently acting as both an enchanter and a swordsman. Yet rather than rejecting that truth, he resolves to master both paths so thoroughly that no one will ever look down on him again. After clearing the floor, he heads toward the teleportation crystal to leave, only to notice a group of adventurers rushing toward it in visible panic, muttering among themselves about how they abandoned a girl while fighting orcs. The leader attempts to justify the decision, insisting that sacrificing her was unavoidable since she had only joined their party that very day, and hearing this excuse immediately strikes a nerve with Orun, who sees his own abandonment reflected in her situation. He confronts the group, berating them for making excuses after leaving someone to die, and forces them to tell him the location. Orun then immediately rushes to save her. The girl is an enchanter who has trapped herself inside a fragile barrier to keep the orcs attacking her at bay, though her limited magical strength makes it clear she cannot hold them off much longer. She cries out for help, desperately begging anyone to save her. Orin arrives just in time. He immediately uses a wind spell to push the monsters back, before strengthening himself with support magic to fight them alone. His skills shock the girl, who cannot tell if he is a swordsman or an enchanter as he keeps cutting the orcs with precision. She falls to her knees crying in relief after he defeats them all. Orun escorts her safely out of the dungeon and prepares to depart, but she stops him and asks for his name, introducing herself first as Sophia Claudel, which immediately catches his attention due to her family name. Orun introduces himself in return and turns to leave again, but Sophia urgently begs him to let her thank him properly by treating him to dinner, and although he refuses at first, her persistent pleading eventually wears him down. She brings him to a shop marked with a rabbit crest, and Orun recalls seeing the same symbol on her cape earlier, making him certain that Sophia belongs to one of the largest guilds, the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Inside the establishment, Sophia unexpectedly encounters her older sister Selma, who is there for a business meeting, and the sight of Sophia arriving with a man immediately causes Selma to assume her younger sister is secretly dating. Selma scolds Sophia, declaring that she is far too young to have a boyfriend, prompting Sophia to hastily deny any romantic involvement, after which Selma takes a closer look at Orun and recognizes him. Orun recognizes her as well, knowing that Selma is the leader of the strongest S-ranked party in the guild, and widely regarded as the most powerful enchanter on the continent, as well as the one who pioneered the concept of assigning highly specialized roles within a party, a strategy that reshaped the entire adventuring meta. Orun cannot help but place some blame on her for his own situation, since if she had never introduced that system, he would never have been forced to abandon his role as a swordsman and become an enchanter in the first place. Orun recalls meeting her during the joint raid weeks ago, which also reminds him of Oliver kicking him out, but he pushes that thought aside. He notices Selma's strange expressions and asks whether she is angry with him. Selma immediately calls him out and accuses him of trying to pursue her younger sister. Orun quickly realizes the misunderstanding and explains that he is only there to share a meal with Sophia and has no romantic interest in her at all. However, instead of clearing things up, his blunt honesty irritates Selma further, as she takes it as an indirect insult towards Sophia. But before the situation can escalate, Sophia steps in and explains that Orun saved her life. Hearing this, Selma immediately understands that Sophia entered the dungeon alone despite being told not to, since her original plan had been to take Sophia there herself in 2 days, and the fact that Sophia could not wait even that long leaves her visibly upset. Still, because Sophia is unharmed, Selma forgives her after making her promise never to act so recklessly again. Then, she turns to Orun to thank him for saving her sister, while also apologizing for her earlier hostility. The tension fades and the three of them sit down to eat together, during which Selma recalls the joint raid where she and Orun first met. That time, both Selma and Orun served as enchanters and were stationed together. In present, Selma openly acknowledges how much his support magic contributed to the success of the raid. Sophia listens in surprise, unable to understand how her sister knows Orun when she has never heard of him, and she curiously asks whether he is someone famous. Selma responds by explaining that Orun is a member of the hero's party. Orun admits that he was dismissed only a few days earlier and is now a free agent. Seizing the opportunity, Selma invites him to join her guild on a training expedition scheduled for the next day. She explains that the mission will have A-rank adventurers guiding new recruits through 50 floors of the dungeon. Normally, this journey would take many months to complete. However, she says she knows a special shortcut, and there is also pressure from the guild's sponsors to finish it quickly. Orun deduces that the true purpose of the expedition seems to let novices gain easy experience by having veterans defeat the periodic floor bosses for them, an insight that visibly impresses Selma. She confirms that he is right and explains that floor bosses appear every 10 levels, posing an insurmountable obstacle for beginners. But if experienced adventurers defeat those bosses for them, the recruits can advance smoothly. Since she considers Orun a seasoned, top-ranked adventurer, she insists he is uniquely qualified to help and offers generous compensation for his assistance. Although her request genuinely pleases him, Orun cannot understand why she values him so highly when his own teammates discarded him as a burden with weak magic, and because he no longer wishes to be an enchanter, he hesitantly refuses. Sophia then looks at him with pleading eyes and begs him to reconsider, insisting that she truly needs him there, which softens his resolve enough for him to compromise by saying he will think it over without making any promises. He also makes it clear that he now considers himself a swordsman, and that if he joins the expedition, it will be strictly in that role. Selma is surprised by this revelation, unaware that Orun was originally a swordsman, but she accepts his condition, assuming that if things take a turn for the worse, he will naturally revert to being an enchanter. She tells him to come to the Silver Rabbits Guild headquarters if he decides to participate, and with that, Orun takes his leave. He heads next to an old man's shop, where he is served tea and casually asked how his day has gone, and the old man thanks him for advertising the store, noting that business has been thriving ever since. Orun apologizes, explaining that he can no longer promote the shop because he is no longer part of the hero's party, which leads the old man to immediately sense the loss of confidence weighing on him. Speaking gently, he tells Orun that a title does not define who he is and that he should begin living for himself while continuing to help others as he always has. And moved by those words, Orun thanks the old man for his advice. Early the next morning, Orun arrives at the Silver Rabbits Guild and finds Selma waiting at the front gate as if she has been expecting him, prompting him to thank her for waiting. She expresses her happiness that he chose to join them and remarks that he looks far more alive than he did the day before, to which Orun responds that leaving the hero's party has lifted a weight from him, and that he is genuinely looking forward to seeing where this new path will lead.
And that is it for today. If you enjoyed this recap, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and feel free to write whatever you want in the comments section. Thank you for watching.